Step out of the car, now.
Officer, this is my home, my driveway.
I said step out. You're being detained for vehicle theft.
Please check my identification before...
Hands behind your back.
The metal clicked. Tight. She was a federal judge. He had no idea. The dash cam captured everything. Every word, every refusal to listen, every second that would cost the city $1.5 million. Dr. Monica Richardson had presided over hundreds of cases: police misconduct, civil rights violations, constitutional law. Now she was the case. How does a routine traffic stop destroy a career? The answer starts with a gut feeling. It ends with a jury verdict. If you're watching from the U.S., this happened in a neighborhood like yours. Drop your state below. 3:40 on a Tuesday afternoon. Quiet street, kids getting off school buses. Nothing routine about what came next. Dr. Monica Richardson pulled into her driveway at 3:40 that Wednesday afternoon. The white Colonial behind her, trees lining the street, kids walking home from the bus stop 2 blocks over. She'd spent 27 years earning her seat on the federal appellate bench, Harvard Law. 15 years as a prosecutor, a decade in private practice defending constitutional rights. Then the appointment. She grabbed her briefcase from the passenger seat. Across the street, the Ring doorbell camera blinked on. Motion detected. Officer Derek Halstead had been following the black Mercedes for 3 blocks, 9 years on the force, 34 years old. He trusted his gut more than he trusted dispatch protocol. Something felt off about the car. Dr. Richardson stepped out, smiled politely. She'd done nothing wrong. Halstead's patrol car stopped behind her. He approached with his hand resting on his service weapon. License and registration. His voice was flat. No greeting, no explanation. She kept her tone calm. Officer, this is my home. I just pulled into my own driveway. Is there a problem? He didn't answer the question. Your vehicle matches the description of a stolen car reported in this area. She looked at him carefully. What's the VIN number on that report? He didn't say. She pointed to her front door 10 feet away. That's my house. I can show you the registration. It's in my glove box. Everything will match. Step out of the vehicle first. She paused. This wasn't protocol. Officers verify VIN numbers before detaining anyone. They check registration. They ask questions. He was skipping steps. Officer, the registration is right here. I can hand it to you through the window. Ma'am, I need you to step out, now. Across the street, Margaret Chen set down her garden hose. She'd been watering her roses. She'd lived here 8 years, same as Dr. Richardson. She watched the officer's hand stay near his gun. The Ring camera kept recording. Dr. Richardson had presided over cases exactly like this: unlawful stops, Fourth Amendment violations, officers who acted on assumptions instead of evidence. She knew what was happening. She also knew cameras were watching. She stepped out slowly, hands visible, no sudden movements. I'm complying, officer, but I'd like to understand what stolen vehicle report you're referring to. Can you verify the plate number? He radioed dispatch. But he didn't ask them to confirm the VIN. He didn't run her plates against the stolen report. He just repeated, vehicle matches the description. Description, not VIN, not plate, not proof. Margaret Chen pulled out her phone. The dash cam in Halstead's patrol car recorded everything. The calm voice, the reasonable questions, the refusal to verify. This was 3:42. 42 minutes from now, he'd realize his mistake. But he wouldn't stop. Officer, please. The registration is in the glove compartment. Right there. Halstead shook his head. Step away from the vehicle. Dr. Richardson moved back, hands raised to shoulder height. Visible, non-threatening. Margaret Chen had seen enough. She dropped the hose and walked across the street. Retired attorney, 71 years old. She'd practiced civil litigation for 40 years before moving to this neighborhood. Excuse me, officer. Halstead turned. That's Judge Richardson. She's lived in that house for 8 years. I've known her since she moved in. His expression didn't change. Ma'am, I need you to step back. I'm just telling you. Step back now or you'll be arrested for interfering with a police investigation. Margaret didn't step back. She pulled out her phone, started recording. Halstead's jaw tightened. He turned back to Dr. Richardson. I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you have identification? Yes, in my purse, inside the car. Retrieve it, slowly. She reached through the open driver's door. Her purse sat on the passenger seat. She pulled out her wallet. Inside, her judicial ID card, her Supreme Court bar license, her driver's license showing this exact address. She held it toward him. A brown UPS truck slowed at the corner. Brian Foster had been delivering to this neighborhood for 6 years, 3 times a week minimum. He recognized Dr. Richardson immediately. He pulled over, got out. Officer, I deliver here monthly. That's Dr. Richardson. She lives right there. Halstead didn't look at him. Sir, I've given an order 3 times already. I'm just saying, this is the last time I'm going to tell anyone to step back. Brian stopped, but he didn't leave. He stood on the sidewalk 15 feet away. 3 people now, all vouching for her identity, all ignored. Dr. Richardson's mind moved through the law like she was reading from a case file she'd reviewed 1,000 times. Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. An officer needs reasonable suspicion to detain. Articulable facts, not a hunch, not a description without verification. She'd written opinions on this exact issue. Now she was living it. The dash cam was still recording. She could see the red light blinking on his patrol car's dashboard. Margaret's phone was up, probably the Ring camera across the street too. Compliance buys time. Calm behavior creates clear evidence. She knew how these cases were won. She kept her voice steady. Officer, I'm happy to cooperate. My name is Dr. Monica Richardson. I'm a federal appellate judge. This is my vehicle and my home. If you check the VIN against your stolen vehicle report, you'll see they don't match. He reached for his handcuffs. Turn around, hands behind your back. Her heart rate spiked, but her voice stayed level. What am I being arrested for? Vehicle theft and resisting arrest. I haven't resisted. I've answered every question. I've complied with every instruction. The cuffs came out. Margaret's voice rose. Officer, this is a federal judge. You need to verify. Ma'am, final warning. Brian stepped forward. Sir, I'm telling you that. I don't care what you're telling me. I gave an order. 3 corrections, 3 refusals. The pattern was forming. Dr. Richardson felt the metal close around her left wrist, then her right. The pressure was immediate, too tight. She forced herself to breathe slowly. Amendment 4 was being violated. She knew it. The cameras knew it. He didn't. Halstead guided her toward the patrol car, his hand on her upper arm. Firm, not gentle. Margaret was still recording. This is wrong. She showed you ID. She told you who she is. He didn't respond. Sarah Kim was walking her daughter home from the elementary school 2 streets over. 9-year-old Emma saw the police lights first. Mommy, what's happening? Sarah stopped. She recognized Dr. Richardson. The judge had spoken at a school board meeting last year about funding for arts programs. Emma stared. Why is that nice lady getting arrested? Sarah had no answer. She pulled out her phone. 3 cameras now, 3 witnesses, 1 federal judge in handcuffs. He ignored a retired lawyer. He ignored a delivery driver who had seen her dozens of times. Would you stay calm in her position? Yes or no, drop it in the comments. The patrol car's back door opened. Dr. Richardson sat down. The cuffs cut into her wrists. Halstead closed the door. She looked directly at the dash cam mounted on his windshield. 42 minutes had passed since she pulled into her driveway. Backup was 3 minutes out. The truth was about to arrive, but the damage was already done. The cuffs clicked shut. Dr. Richardson spoke clearly. Officer, I haven't resisted. My judicial identification is in my purse. Please check it before proceeding. Halstead didn't open the purse. He walked her to the patrol car, opened the back door, guided her inside. Sarah Kim stood 30 feet away. Her daughter Emma gripped her hand. Mommy, why is the nice lady getting arrested? Sarah had no answer for a 9-year-old. How do you explain what doesn't make sense? She raised her phone, started recording. Dr. Richardson sat in the back seat. The cuffs were too tight. Metal pressing into bone. She could feel her hands starting to go numb. She looked directly at the dash cam mounted on the windshield. Her voice was calm, deliberate, every word on record. I am Dr. Monica Richardson, federal appellate judge for the 4th Circuit. This is an unlawful detention under the Fourth Amendment. I have identified myself. I have complied with all instructions. I have not resisted. She paused. The camera is recording this. Halstead got into the driver's seat. Radioed dispatch. I have a suspect in custody for vehicle theft. Black Mercedes. Requesting backup for transport. Dispatch respond. Copy. Backup en route. Confirm VIN on the stolen vehicle report. Silence. Officer Halstead confirmed VIN. He cleared his throat. Stand by. He didn't have it. 2 minutes later, a second patrol car pulled up. Officer Sarah Martinez stepped out. 12 years on the force. She'd seen bad stops before. This looked like one. She approached Halstead. What have we got? He gestured toward the Mercedes. Stolen vehicle. Subject refused to comply. Martinez looked at the three people standing on the sidewalk. Margaret still holding her phone up. Brian watching from beside his truck. Sarah Kim with her daughter. These folks know something. They tried to interfere. I told them to step back. Martinez walked to the patrol car, looked through the window at Dr. Richardson. Well-dressed, professional, calm, not someone who looked like a car thief. She walked back to Halstead, kept her voice low. Did you run the VIN? It matches the description on the stolen vehicle report. I asked about the VIN. He hesitated. Stolen Mercedes, black, this area. That's not a VIN. I'm so sorry. Martinez reached for her radio. Dispatch, this is Martinez. Run a check on the name Monica Richardson, Richardson. Static, then the dispatcher's voice came back. Different tone. Urgent. Monica Richardson, federal appellate judge, Fourth Circuit, appointed 2019. Martinez closed her eyes. Say again. That's a federal judge, Officer Martinez. Repeat, federal judge. The words hung in the air. Margaret heard it through Martinez's radio. She lowered her phone slowly. Brian exhaled. Sarah Kim pulled her daughter close. Martinez turned to Halstead. Her voice was quiet, controlled. Get her out of that car, now. He opened the back door. Dr. Richardson stepped out. The cuffs were still on. Martinez walked over. Ma'am, I'm going to remove these. I apologize. The metal came off. Red marks circled both wrists, deep, angry. 42 minutes she'd been detained. Halstead stood 5 feet away. His face had gone pale. Dr. Richardson rubbed her wrist slowly. She looked at him. He tried to smile, tried to make it go away. Ma'am, this was just a simple misunderstanding. These things happen. We can forget about this. No harm done. She stared at him. Her voice was steady, final. No, officer, we cannot. She turned to Martinez. I'll need the names and badge numbers of everyone involved. I'll need copies of all footage. Dash cam, body camera if you have it. Ring camera from across the street. Martinez nodded. Yes, ma'am. Dr. Richardson looked back at Halstead. You detained a federal judge for 42 minutes without verifying a single fact. You ignored 3 witnesses. You refused to check my identification. You violated my Fourth Amendment rights in front of cameras and children. She paused. This will not be forgotten. Emma's small voice cut through the silence. Is she okay now, Mommy? Sarah nodded, but she kept recording. The dash cam was still running. Every second saved, every word documented. The case had already begun. Internal Affairs. Captain Lisa Rodriguez watched the dash cam footage 3 times. She made notes. Never verified the VIN number. Never checked registration. Ignored 3 separate witnesses who confirmed identity. Detained a federal judge for 42 minutes based on a vehicle description that didn't match any active stolen car report. She closed her laptop. This is indefensible. Officer Halstead's personnel file sat on her desk. She'd requested it the morning after the incident. 19 citizen complaints over 9 years. 16 of those complaints came from black motorists. His traffic stop data told the same story. He stopped black drivers at a rate 4.2 times higher than white drivers in his assigned district. The pattern had been there all along. No one had looked. Dr. Richardson filed her federal lawsuit 11 days later. $2 million in damages, violations of the 4th and 14th Amendments. The evidence package was comprehensive. Dashcam footage, Ring doorbell footage from across the street, Sarah Kim's cell phone video, written statements from Margaret Chen, Brian Foster, and Sarah. 3 cameras, 3 witnesses, 42 minutes of constitutional violations on record. Halstead's attorney watched the footage once. He set it down. You're going to lose your job, you'll lose your pension, and you'll be personally liable for damages because you acted outside department policy. Halstead stared at him. It was a mistake. I thought, what you thought doesn't matter. What you did is on camera. The department suspended him without pay pending the outcome of the investigation. Discovery in the lawsuit revealed more problems. 2 other officers in the same precinct showed nearly identical patterns. High stop rates for black motorists, multiple complaints, minimal disciplinary action. The department's training records showed officers received just 4 hours per year of instruction on constitutional rights and implicit bias. 4 hours. To understand the laws they were sworn to uphold. The Department of Justice announced a formal investigation into the department's practices 3 weeks after Dr. Richardson filed suit. Pattern and practice investigation. Federal oversight. Potential consent decree. The case went to trial on a Monday in February. The courtroom was packed. Margaret Chen testified first. She described watching Officer Halstead ignore her when she identified Dr. Richardson. She described his threat to arrest her for speaking up. Brian Foster testified next. He delivered packages to Dr. Richardson's home at least 40 times over 6 years. He knew her. Halstead didn't care. Sarah Kim brought the cell phone footage. The judge allowed it into evidence. The jury watched a 9-year-old girl ask why the nice lady was being arrested. No one in that courtroom had an answer Emma would understand. The dashcam footage played on a large screen. Every word Dr. Richardson had said, every refusal from Halstead, every witness he'd dismissed. Dr. Richardson took the stand on day 3. She recounted her credentials. 27 years in law, federal appellate judge, specialist in constitutional rights and civil liberties. She'd known exactly what was happening to her. Amendment 4, unlawful seizure. She'd taught it. She'd written judicial opinions on it. Now she'd experienced it. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They came back with their verdict on day 14. 19 complaints, 4.2 times the stop rate. 16 black motorists ignored over 9 years. It took arresting a federal judge for anyone to pay attention. Does the punishment fit the crime? You've seen the evidence. You've heard the witnesses. Drop your verdict in the comments. The foreman stood. We find in favor of the plaintiff, Dr. Monica Richardson. The courtroom was silent. Compensatory damages, $900,000. Punitive damages, $600,000. $1.5 million. Halstead sat motionless. His career was over. His pension gone. His name attached to one of the most clear-cut cases of racial profiling in the district's history. Dr. Richardson had told him on that driveway, this will not be forgotten. She'd meant it. The gavel came down. The dash cam that started it all had been recording for 42 minutes. The jury had watched every second. Justice took longer, but it arrived. $1.5 million, $900,000 in compensatory damages, $600,000 in punitive damages. The jury had spoken. Officer Derek Halstead was terminated from the police force the following week. No pension, no benefits, no appeals process left. He was barred from law enforcement nationwide. His name added to databases that track officers dismissed for misconduct. No department would hire him. No second chances. Dr. Richardson used the settlement to establish the Richardson Civil Rights Foundation. Its mission provide legal representation to victims of police misconduct who lack the resources to fight back. People without law degrees, people without connections, people who get arrested and have no federal judge's credentials to protect them. The foundation opened 6 months after the verdict. The police department faced a reckoning it had avoided for years. Body cameras became mandatory for all officers. No exceptions. Training requirements increased from 4 hours per year to 40. Constitutional rights, implicit bias, de-escalation tactics, accountability. A civilian oversight board was created. Independent investigators, public meetings, real consequences. 6 other officers were placed under investigation for similar patterns of racially biased stops. The Department of Justice investigation continued. Federal monitors were assigned. The consent decree took effect. Dr. Richardson's daughter graduated from law school that spring. She passed the bar exam on her first attempt. She joined the foundation as a staff attorney. In her first interview, a reporter asked why she chose civil rights work. Her answer was simple. If my mother wasn't equipped to fight back, who would have believed her? She's a federal judge. She knew Amendment 4 by heart. She stayed calm. She had witnesses. She paused. Most people don't have any of that. They just have the truth. And sometimes that's not enough. Generational impact. The cycle continuing. 3 states away, another traffic stop, another judge, another officer who sees a black driver in an expensive car and makes assumptions. But this time the officer checks the identification first, verifies the registration, apologizes for the inconvenience. He'd heard about the Richardson case. He'd seen the footage in training. He learned. Change spreads slowly. One officer at a time, one department at a time, one verdict at a time. But it spreads. If you believe accountability protects everyone, not just federal judges share this story, the dash cam that captured those 42 minutes is still used in police academies. Training material, what not to do. Dr. Richardson still sits on the federal bench. She still presides over civil rights cases. She still rules on Fourth Amendment violations. But now when officers testify in her courtroom, they know exactly who she is. They know what happened in her driveway. They know the cost of ignoring the law. The foundation has helped 83 people in its first 2 years. 83 cases that might have disappeared without legal support. 83 voices that got heard. Emma is 11 now. She still remembers from him that afternoon. The police lights, the nice lady in handcuffs, her mother recording everything. She wants to be a lawyer when she grows up. Some lessons stay with you. What case should we cover next? Drop your answer in the comments below. Justice isn't fast, but when it arrives, it changes everything.